History remembers Genghis Khan as one of the greatest conquerors who ever lived. But what if I told you? One of his bloodiest wars began with a letter. A single decision made inside a royal court would unleash consequences no one could have imagined. An empire stretching from Persia to Central Asia was erased. Ancient cities that had stood for centuries were reduced to ashes. Millions would die. All because one ruler believed he could insult Genghis Khan and survive. This is Past Explained, where history comes alive. By 1218, Genghis Khan had already conquered northern China and unified the Mongol steppe. His empire was vast, but to the west lay something he didn't want to destroy: the Khwarezmian Empire, a wealthy Muslim civilization stretching across modern-day Iran, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Afghanistan. Its great cities, Bukhara, Samarkand, and Merv, were among the richest and most cultured in the world. Home to more than 20 million people, it was one of the greatest powers of its age. At its head stood Sultan Shah Ala ad-Din Muhammad II. He had not inherited a weak kingdom. Through years of relentless conquest, he had transformed the Khwarezmian Empire into one of the largest states in the Islamic world. Rival dynasties fell before him. Their lands were absorbed into his empire, extending his rule from Persia to the borders of India. With every victory, his confidence grew. He began to see himself as a new Alexander the Great, a conqueror destined to dominate the East. Medieval chroniclers claimed he commanded an army of more than 400,000 soldiers. To Muhammad, there was no rival he could not defeat. Genghis Khan, fresh from burning the cities of northern China, had actually pivoted toward peace. He needed a trading partner, not another war. He sent a personal letter to Sultan Muhammad, carving his intentions into history. He called the Sultan his equal. He proposed open trade along the Silk Road. Sultan Muhammad wasn't interested. He saw the Mongols as uncivilized nomads, barbarians from the steppe, who had no place negotiating with the cultured Islamic world. The letter was received with contempt. But Muhammad's first mistake wasn't the letter. It was what happened next. Genghis Khan, in an attempt to prove his word, sent a caravan of 450 men, Muslims, merchants, and ambassadors, carrying gold, silk, silver, and luxury goods to the Khwarezmian border city of Otrar, expecting the protection of the Silk Road's ancient laws. The governor of Otrar, a man named Inalchuq, shattered those laws. He accused the delegation of espionage, a convenient lie to cover a grand theft. He sent a rider to his nephew, the Shah, asking for instructions. And here, the Sultan made his first fatal error. He didn't investigate. He didn't hesitate. He gave the order: do as you please. Inalchuq unleashed hell. His soldiers swarmed the caravan. They didn't just arrest the merchants, they butchered them. Swords slashed through silk and flesh alike. The governor seized every ounce of gold, every camel, every bolt of fabric. He wiped out the entire delegation, leaving the bodies to rot in the sun. Genghis Khan made one final attempt to avoid war. He sent 3 ambassadors, official diplomats, directly to the court of Shah Muhammad, demanding justice for the murdered merchants. Under the customs of the age, ambassadors were considered sacred. They represented not themselves, but the ruler who sent them. To harm one was to insult an entire nation. Shah Muhammad's response would become one of the most catastrophic diplomatic decisions in human history. He ordered the execution of the chief ambassador. The other 2 were spared, but only to carry a message. Their beards were forcibly shaved, and they were sent back across the steppe in humiliation. To a modern audience, that might sound like a simple insult. In the 13th century, it was something far worse. Across both the Islamic world and the Mongol steppe, a man's beard was a symbol of honor, dignity, masculinity, and his standing before God. To shave it by force was to strip away his identity. It declared that he was no longer a free man, but a slave, a child, a man without honor. The two surviving ambassadors returned not only as witnesses to murder, but as living symbols of unbearable disgrace. But Shah Muhammad was not acting out of madness. He was acting out of supreme confidence. To understand his decision, you have to see the world through his eyes. To the west, he had humbled the Caliph of Baghdad. To the south, his influence stretched toward the riches of India. His empire was among the wealthiest and most powerful on earth. When he looked east, he did not see Genghis Khan as an emperor. He saw a tribal warlord who had simply gotten lucky fighting divided Chinese kingdoms. The Shah did the math. He commanded perhaps 400,000 soldiers across his vast empire, including heavily armored cavalry, capable of crushing almost any conventional army. Genghis Khan could field perhaps 100,000 to 200,000 mounted warriors. In the Shah's mind, the comparison was obvious. He was a tank. Genghis Khan was a mosquito. If the Mongols dared to cross the mountains and deserts into his territory, they would be swallowed by the size of his empire. His legendary cities, Samarkand, Bukhara, and Urganch, were protected by towering walls, while the vast deserts and rugged mountain ranges seemed like natural fortresses no invader could overcome. He believed he was untouchable. He was catastrophically wrong. Shah Muhammad failed to understand the enemy standing before him. The Khwarezmian Empire looked immense on a map, but beneath its surface it was fragile, a loose collection of rival governors, ambitious nobles, mercenaries, and local rulers held together more by fear than by loyalty. The Mongol Empire was the exact opposite. It was a single, disciplined military machine. Every commander had earned his position through merit. Every soldier obeyed without hesitation. Every unit moved with precision, speed, and absolute coordination. It was an army built for one purpose: to move fast, strike hard, and remain united where other armies could fracture. And Genghis Khan had no intention of unleashing that army, not yet. He had sent his ambassadors to Khwarezm with an offer of peace and trade. But they returned humiliated, their heads shaved as a deliberate insult. For Genghis Khan, this was no longer a dispute between merchants. The insult had crossed a line. The man who had come seeking justice through diplomacy now had a different answer. He would seek it with war. He assembled the largest Mongol invasion force ever gathered, between 100,000 and 200,000 of the most experienced, battle-hardened horsemen on earth, and pointed them west toward the Khwarezmian Empire. According to later Persian chroniclers, Genghis declared to his generals, "I did not begin this war. They did." What followed was not simply another conquest. It was one of the most systematic destructions of a civilization in recorded history. In the autumn of 1219, the Mongol Empire moved, not as one great army, but as many. Instead of marching straight toward the Shah's capital, Genghis Khan shattered his own force into several independent armies. To any other commander, it would have looked like madness. Each column disappeared into a different direction, crossing mountains, deserts, and river valleys that the Shah believed no large army could survive. Shah Muhammad smiled. This was exactly what he had hoped for. Convinced that the Mongols would eventually concentrate on one target, he scattered his own soldiers across the empire's great fortress cities: Otrar, Bukhara, Samarkand, Urganch, and dozens of smaller strongholds. Massive garrisons waited behind towering walls, expecting the invaders to exhaust themselves in long sieges. It was the worst decision he could have made. Instead of one invasion, the Shah now faced many. Before one city even realized it was under attack, another was already burning hundreds of miles away. Messengers galloped desperately across the empire, carrying contradictory reports. Governors begged for reinforcements that never came. Entire armies sat trapped behind city walls, while neighboring provinces were annihilated one by one. The Shah still believed his numbers would save him. He had underestimated the speed of the Mongols. Their horses could travel extraordinary distances with astonishing endurance. Every warrior carried multiple mounts, allowing exhausted horses to be replaced without slowing the advance. Their commanders communicated with remarkable precision, striking cities hundreds of kilometers apart while appearing to be everywhere at once. And when enemy armies finally marched out to meet them, the Mongols rarely fought the battle their opponents expected. Again and again, their cavalry pretended to panic. They turned and fled, convincing enemy commanders that victory was within reach. Confident pursuers abandoned their defensive positions and charged after them. It was exactly what the Mongols wanted. Hours later, hidden cavalry emerged from every direction. The hunters became the hunted. The Shah's armies were defeated not because they lacked courage, but because they were fighting an enemy who refused to wage war by the rules they understood. Even the empire's legendary cities offered little protection. The Mongols had learned siege warfare from years of campaigning against northern China. Engineers from conquered kingdoms marched alongside the army, constructing massive trebuchets, catapults, battering rams, and siege towers. Walls that had stood for centuries were breached with terrifying efficiency. Then came the terror. Cities that resisted were often destroyed without mercy. Cities that surrendered immediately sometimes survived, though usually stripped of their wealth and skilled craftsmen. Every massacre became a weapon. Refugees carried stories of entire populations erased from existence, spreading fear farther than any Mongol horseman could ride. Soon, fear itself was conquering cities before the Mongols even arrived. The first great prize was Bukhara. One of the greatest centers of Islamic scholarship and trade fell after a brief campaign. According to later Persian chroniclers, Genghis Khan entered the city's great mosque and declared to the terrified survivors, "I am the punishment of God. Had you not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." Whether those were his exact words or not, they captured what many believed they were witnessing. Not merely an invasion, but divine judgment. Then came Samarkand, the jewel of Central Asia. Its walls were immense, its population numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Its defenders included tens of thousands of soldiers, and even war elephants captured from India. None of it mattered. Within days, the city fell. Much of its population was killed, enslaved, or deported. Skilled artisans were selected and sent east to serve the Mongol Empire. One of the richest cities on earth was left hollow. Meanwhile, Shah Muhammad fled from province to province, abandoning the very cities he had sworn to defend. The emperor, who had believed himself untouchable, was now a fugitive inside his own empire. Genghis Khan refused to let him escape. He dispatched his greatest generals, Jabe and Subutai, on one of history's most extraordinary pursuit campaigns. For months, they chased the Shah across deserts, mountains, and kingdoms, giving him no opportunity to rebuild his shattered empire. Eventually, Shah Muhammad reached a lonely island in the Caspian Sea. There, sick, broken, and abandoned by almost everyone who had once feared him, the ruler of one of the greatest empires on earth died in exile. But the destruction was not over. In 1221, the ancient city of Merv, among the largest and wealthiest cities of its age, met the same fate. Contemporary accounts describe destruction on a scale almost beyond comprehension. Medieval chroniclers claimed that hundreds of thousands were killed, figures that are impossible to verify, but reflect the unimaginable horror remembered by survivors. City after city, province after province, The Khwarezmian Empire did not simply lose a war, it ceased to exist. In less than 2 years, an empire stretching from Persia to Central Asia had been erased by an enemy its ruler had dismissed as nothing more than nomadic horsemen. By the time the Mongol invasion ended, the Khwarezmian Empire had ceased to exist. An estimated 15 million people had perished, nearly 75% of the population. Entire cities that had thrived for centuries were reduced to empty ruins. Irrigation systems that had sustained agriculture for generations were destroyed so thoroughly that some regions remained deserts for 800 years. The fall of the Khwarezmian Empire changed the course of history forever. What began with the murder of a handful of merchants ended with the destruction of one of the most powerful empires on earth. The Silk Road now lay open before the Mongols, and the gates to the Islamic world, Persia, the Caucasus, and eventually Europe, had been thrown wide open. Genghis Khan had proven a lesson that would echo through the centuries. Never mistake a desire for peace as a sign of weakness, and never underestimate an enemy simply because he appears smaller than you. Shah Muhammad believed his walls, his wealth, and his vast armies made him invincible. In the end, none of them could save him. His empire vanished from the map, while the name of Genghis Khan became synonymous with conquest itself. And all of it, every burning city, every shattered kingdom, every empire that would soon tremble beneath Mongol hooves, could be traced back to a single decision made in a royal court. The day a ruler chose pride over diplomacy,